Psalm 27, beginning with verse 13, the word of the Lord is as follows. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he will strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Thus far, the word of the Lord. I want to preach tonight from the subject, lessons and a prayer. Lessons and a prayer. I'm thinking about how to address our ending this year and entering the new year. I began to reflect upon what have been some of the most important learnings for me in 2021. What are the discoveries, revelations, truths that I've received in the course of this year that I need not forget but carry with me for the facing of the years to come? I believe that it would be profitable for everybody to be able to reflect upon the course of the year and the lessons that God has sought to teach you, the revelations that God has given you, the discoveries that God has allowed you to unearth in the spirit realm. Because whatever those things are, they were never just for that moment, but they were so you would have them in your file to be able to pull upon as you are proceeding in the days, months, and years ahead. And so I began to interrogate this past year and look at some lessons that I need to carry with me. And I want to share some with you. And while there have been many, there are a couple that I want to lift for us tonight. The first is that the strength and value of a life of faith and pursuit of God is seldom seen in the immediate or short term, but it is found in the sweep of life across years. Now, this runs contrary to the current sentiment, which values everything in terms of immediacy and speed. Technology and its advancement has caused us to measure the value and worth of a given thing by how fast things run, how little time you have to wait. And every update promises an acceleration in speed and a lowering in waiting. And while technology increases matters of pace and speed as it relates to instrumentation, it has little to no effect upon things that really matter. The natural gestation period for pregnancy and birth is still 9 months. 365 days still make up the year. 24 hours still make up the day. God, who is before time, who exists outside of time, who created time, and who will be when time is no more, still operates on a schedule determined and known only by God. And God has so set the course of life such that we see the power and value of Him and our pursuit of Him over time. And what that means, my friends, is that the experience of promise fulfillment is connected to the capacity to wait longer than you'd like. God is not Burger King, where you get what you want within the time frame that you want. With God, you very rarely get to have it your way. It's His way, which is usually timed longer than the time that we desire. Some things come to fruition years, even decades after the planting of the seed or the casting of the vision, and still others are not seen by the initial generation, but by a succeeding generation. Consequently, the disciplines of patience and discernment are crucial. The life that pursues the person and purpose of God is the life where patience and discernment are essential. Patience is the capacity to stand underneath and not give way. It is the ability to actively await the moves and means of God. It is a discipline developed through time. It's a discipline developed through delay, through unexpected extensions, through curveballs, through a series of no's, through disappointments, through ups and downs and ins and outs. And it is with the development of patience, through patience having its perfect work, that we are made thorough and complete, lacking nothing. It is through the standing under God's process of fulfillment that God makes us into the people who are fit for what God provides. You see, God's process is never simply about providing the what. God's process is also about developing the who will receive the what. The word for someone in this season is that God is developing. God is increasing your capacity to wait, to endure, to persevere. And the good news in this is that however much your capacity to wait is an indication of the magnitude of that for which you are waiting. In other words, the longer the wait, the greater what God must have in mind. And the more you must become in order to receive what God has in mind. This is also where discernment is key. Discernment is the capacity to perceive that which is underneath the surface, that which is behind the scenes, that which is God in intention and meaning. Discernment in delay counteracts the pull of the flesh to give up, to throw in the towel, or make moves that you later will regret. You see, friends, had Adam exercised discernment, he never would have taken the fruit from the woman and experienced the subsequent fall. Had Abram and Sarai exercised discernment, they never would have used Hagar to conceive Ishmael, setting in motion the context for the historical rivalry that continues to plague the Middle East. Unless we go too far afield in just Bible age, there are those of us who can testify that had we exercised discernment, there are some fires that we could have avoided jumping into. In the midst of what we could not wait for God to do, for God to work out, for God to manifest, our lack of discernment prompted the taking of steps that we wish we could have taken back. If we had only discerned some things we wouldn't have said. If we had only discerned some places we wouldn't have gone. If we had only discerned some connections we would not have made, all because we did not discern. The power of our pursuit of God and God's plans for our lives is seen over time, which requires patience and discernment, which means that God must be given the time to be seen and to perform what God intends. He may not come when we want him, but he's always on time. But the second lesson that I learned in the course of this year is to steward every moment as a door to what is beyond your imagining. Steward every moment as a door to what is beyond your imagining. Friends, you never know what introduction, what assignment, what conversation is connected to God's answer to a prayer, provision for a need, or opening of a door. You see, with God, there are no wasted moments or accidental encounters. The steps of a good person are ordered by the Lord, and the Lord delights in that person's way. Every engagement, every encounter is a trust from God into which God calls us to steward. And therefore, you got to be careful how you entertain strangers, because they may be angels in disguise. The lesson I've learned is give every encounter your best, because you never know what impression will be the one that unlocks the door. You never know what person God is attuning to you and his will for your life. You don't know who is tied to whom. And therefore, you can't afford to overlook, underestimate, or discount any person, because how God has connected them may be the means, the very means through which God seeks to further you. Which means every day that God gives you breath, you need to pray for God to make you sensitive, make you present, make you humble, make you aware, make you hospitable, make you responsive, make you responsible, make you accountable. You got to steward every engagement, every encounter as a door through which God may look to take you in to your future. Because, friends, many of the doors into which I've walked and the tables where I now sit were not of my own thinking. They were not of my own making. It was through other people whose intentions I did not even imagine. But God opened their minds and sensitized their hearts to his purposes. All I've done is be a good steward of relationships. I've tried to be supportive and responsive. I show up just to show up and support. And in so doing, God has used that as a means to introduce, as a means to recommend, as a means to open, as a means to provide. Steward every encounter as a door through which God may take you into your future. But there's a third lesson that I've learned in the course of this year, and that is growth and maturity in God are inextricably tied to experiencing some type of pain. Growth and maturity in God are inextricably tied to experiencing some type of pain. The old adage in fitness is no pain, no gain. And that adage is not limited to physical development. It is also applicable to spiritual development. Maturity in God, a mature understanding of God, a deep life of trust and belief in God comes at the expense of some pain. Understand this. Depths of revelation are only needed for depths of profound questioning or challenge. You don't get deep revelation off of a surface challenge. You don't get profound insight out of a pitiful situation. No. Deep revelation comes when you have a deep challenge, a heavy question. Job does not see God clearly in Job chapter 1 when everything that he touched turned to gold. He sees God clearly in chapter 42 after his world has been turned inside out and upside down. John doesn't get the revelation of Jesus Christ while he's pastoring in Ephesus. He gets the revelation of Jesus Christ while on exile on the island of Patmos. I'm just trying to help somebody understand maturity, growth, depth in knowledge of and relationship with God includes experiencing and knowing pain. In other words, you can't grow in God and be pain avoidant. If you're going to grow and mature in God, there will be the experience of some pain. It may be a painful loss of a job, loss of a position, loss of a loved one. It may be a painful decision that you must make to separate, to remove yourself, to cut ties. It may be the experience of physical sickness, emotional upheaval, relational disappointment. In the course of any one of those experiences, it is in that what you know and what you think about God is challenged. In those moments, whether they last days, weeks, months, or even years, is the seedbed for God to develop a more mature knowledge and understanding of Him and God's ways. It's through those periods that God becomes less of a fulfiller of your laundry list, and God actually becomes more of a refuge and a strength. God becomes more of a light and salvation. God becomes more of your glory and the lifter up of your head. It is through those experiences that you come to know what it means for Jesus to sure enough be the center of your joy, for God to truly be the joy and the strength of your life. It's with the painful experiences that God becomes enough and you discover God to be more than enough. I'm talking to some people who've been around the block with God, and you've come to know God in a far deeper way through the pain. You appreciate God not just being your sin bearer, but you know God to be your pain bearer. God bears your griefs and carries your sorrows. He stands with you in the gap. He stands beside you when you aren't feeling Him or even wanting Him. And all the while, He is the means by which you wake up and face every day. He is the strength that gets you through it all. And He is the one who lifts you above it all. What I've come to the conclusion is that God's ability to keep you in and see you through is always greater than what you face. God's ability to keep you in and see you through is always greater than what you face. In other words, there has been no difficulty, no disappointment, no hardship, no heartache that's been greater than God and God's ability to keep me and see me through. And I believe that the same is true for everyone who's listening to me right now. And you know what the evidence of it is? The evidence of it is that you're alive to hear me speak. The very fact that you are above ground and have the mind to listen to me on this night is an indication of God's ability to keep you being greater than what you face. And I know, I'm not minimizing the severity of what you face. I'm simply indicating the greatness of our God. The death of a spouse, the death of a child, the death of a parent, the death of a sibling, those are enormous and they are shattering. But as terrible as that may be, somehow you're here. Somehow the next day came with you in it. Somehow the next week came with you in it. And for some, the next month has come with you in it. And for others, the next year came with you in it. And here we are, moments from the next year. Should the Lord tarry, it will come with us in it. And what that says is not one thing or the collective pains of 2021 will have been greater than God's ability to keep us and to see us through what we face. I dare you to start visualizing or cataloging what you faced this past year and know that not even that or them has been greater than God's ability to keep you and to see you through. through. Not even the depth of pain, not even the immensity of the trauma has been greater than God's ability to keep you and to see you through. And I believe for somebody, that's enough for a praise break right there. Because whatever came to your mind, not even that has been able to keep you from God's ability to keep you and see you through. I dare for somebody just to post, not even that, whatever that was that came to your mind that should have taken you out, could have taken you out, but it was not beyond God's ability to keep you and see you through. God has been greater. God has been more. God has been God. And so as we say goodbye to 2021 and get ready to say hello to 2022, I make no predictions. I do not live by what I can forecast. I don't live by what I can predict. We walk by faith and not by sight. And what I've discovered is that faith sustains you through the shocks and sensitizes you to the surprises. And here's what my prayer for you is. My prayer for you is for you to have a faith to sustain you through the shocks and to sensitize you to the surprises. I can't predict the shocks and I can't forecast the surprises. So I'm praying for you to have a faith that will sustain you through the shocks and will sensitize you to the surprises. This faith is the faith found in David's words. Listen to David again in Psalm 27, verses 13 and 14. I had fainted unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. The faith is summed up in the 4 words, unless I had believed. And that's what I'm praying for each of you. In the midst of David's enemies surrounding him and breathing out cruelty against him, David had a faith to sustain him in the midst of the shocks. In the face of them, David said he would have fainted. He would have quit. He would have given way. He would have given in. He would have given up. He would have wasted away unless he had believed. He had a faith that sustained him in the midst of the shock. He had a faith that held him and upheld him. And I believe I'm on somebody's street right now who knows about this sustaining faith that allows you to say, unless I had believed. The news would have taken me out unless I had believed. I would have lost my mind unless I had believed. I would have hurt myself or hurt somebody else unless I had believed. I could not have faced it unless I had believed. I wouldn't have made it through the night unless I had believed. I could not have gotten out of bed the next morning unless I had believed. I would not have made it through the week unless I had believed. I wouldn't be alive at the end of the year unless I had believed. Oh, I'm talking to somebody right now. You ought to just post unless I had believed. And just put 3 dots because only you know what those 3 dots meant when you look at the shocks that have come your way in the course of the year, the disappointments that have come your way. But unless you had believed, unless you had believed, I'm praying for faith that will sustain you through the shocks that you can't predict. Shocks that come your way. But I'm not just praying for you to have a faith that sustains you through the shocks. I'm praying for a faith that will sensitize you to the surprises. Because the truth of the matter is that this past year hadn't just had shocks. There have been some surprises. There have been some things that have fallen towards you and fallen to you that you did not ask for, you did not planned for, you don't even merit or deserve. Those were surprises. Surprises, surprises. And my friends, it takes faith to sensitize you to some of the surprises that God has for you. I'm not by myself in that regard. There are some witnesses right now who can co-sign with me saying that you would have missed the moment unless you had believed. You would not have recognized the opportunity unless you had believed. You would not have given it a shot unless you had believed. You would not have gone on the interview unless you had believed. You would not have spoken up unless you had believed. You would not have volunteered unless you had believed. You would not have stepped up to the plate unless you had believed. You would not have taken the shot unless you had believed. You need a faith to sensitize you to the surprises. David declares, unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. David said, I believed that the shock of the moment was not going to be the last moment that I would see. I believe that God has another moment where I will see his goodness, that God has another moment beyond this one that I will see, not after I die, but while I'm alive. David has a faith that says, my days will not always be dark. It won't always be sad, won't always be dreary. My nights will not always be long. My times will not always be filled with weeping. David says, I'll see something more. I'll see something better. I'll see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. I'll see the light of the Lord in the land of the living. I'll see the joy of the Lord in the land of the living. I'll see the peace of the Lord in the land of the living. I'll see the power of the Lord in the land of the living. And friends, that's my prayer for you. I'm praying that you'll have a faith that will sensitize you through the shock, that will sustain you through your shock and sensitize you towards your surprises. In other words, the faith I'm praying for you is a resurrection faith. It is a faith that held the disciples through the shock of Friday's crucifixion. Didn't get any worse than Friday when Jesus was hung high and stretched wide. It didn't get any darker than it was when Jesus gave up the ghost and they put Jesus in the grave, the very Lamb of God who was there to take away all of our sins. The one that they had hoped to be the Redeemer of Israel now lays limp in a borrowed tomb. It doesn't get much worse than to have hooked your wagon now to a dead leader. Friday looked awfully bad. Saturday looked even worse. But a faith, my God, a faith that will receive, my God, a surprise on Sunday morning's resurrection. When God raises Jesus from the dead and they get the record, they get the witness that the Jesus that they sought who was dead, he's not here, he's alive. Just as he said, it took a faith, my God, to be able to be sensitive to the surprise of Jesus coming into the upper room that evening and saying, peace be unto you, and showing them the marks in his hand and his side. It took a faith that sensitized them to the surprise of Sunday morning. And my friends, that's the faith that I'm really praying for you. I'm praying for a faith that will endure the night of weeping and await the joy that comes in the morning. I'm praying for a faith that will absorb fainting and growing weary and utterly falling, and await the Lord renewing your strength, causing you to mount up with wings as eagles, run and not get weary, walk and not faint. I'm praying for a faith that will cause you to wait on the Lord and be of good courage and know that he will strengthen your heart. That's what I'm praying for you, my friend, because I cannot predict the shocks. I cannot forecast the surprises. But what I can do is I can pray for God to give you a faith that will sustain you when the shocks come. For faith that will sensitize you to the surprises that God brings your way.